Hello. Get your official products such as this marvelous t-shirt that I'm wearing or this great coffee mug that I'm drinking out of and many other products with the show about stuff, the Stephen Davis logo at https://www.zazzle.com/store/a-stuff-store and make sure you get your 15% discount today.
Welcome to a new podcast show about stuff. It's the show about stuff, the Stephen Davis Show. Here's your host, Stephen Davis.
Hello to all. Welcome to season 2 of the show about stuff, the Stephen Davis Show. On this episode, I have a special guest from across the pond, Andrew Mandan Ramroop, OBE, live from London, England. Mr. Ramroop owns the legendary bespoke tailors Maurice Sedwell and is the first tailor to be made a visiting professor of the London Institute. Welcome, Andrew. Thank you for coming to my show today, from all the way from London. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here.
I appreciate it. The first thing I think that my folks want to know is, what is an MBE?
MBE is a member of the British Empire. I'm not a member of the British Empire. I am an officer of the most excellent order of the British Empire. So the OBE is an officer. The MBE is a member
Okay.
of the member of the British Empire, but mine is a little different, slightly higher.
Slightly higher. Oh, what benefits are there besides everybody knowing that you're a great person?
I think that the actual benefit is that if the Queen comes forward to you and shakes your hand and pins the medal on your lapel, is very special. Very few of us in our lifetime get that opportunity to even get close to the Queen, but to have her face-to-face communicating with you, asking you about your skills, your career, what you've done, and you using that opportunity to communicate to Her Majesty about what you've been doing. The award is usually given to people who's achieved the highest level in different fields of endeavor. Many of the great sports stars have received awards from Her Majesty. Those who are captains of industry, politics, and those who've really achieved in charity as well. Yeah, I'm very happy. I'm the only practicing tailor in history to receive an award such as this, and I'm very proud of it.
Tell folks where you were born and tell them about your parents a little bit.
My father was a charcoal miner, the sort of stuff you buy to do barbecues today. His family was charcoal mining. So where you dug the pit and you put the green timber in and you set it afire and then cover it with different types of leaves and bamboo and other green stuff. So you put the logs underneath, cover it with green stuff so it would smoke rather than burn to ashes. And then they will cut that up and bag it and go in their donkey cart and sell it throughout Trinidad, because of course we had very little electricity. And so fuel to cook was charcoal or raw wood that you would go in the forest and you get. And that's what my father did. And then later on, he got a job as a gardener, stroke messenger, stroke barman at the guest house and cleaner, master of all trades. And
what was his name?
His name was John.
John.
My dad was John. He was a bit of an entrepreneur. He was always trying to do something to make money. And so he got a cart and he used to sell fruits and sweets and cigarettes and little bits and pieces to supplement his income to get us all fed. And my mother she was a maid. When she was working, she was a maid, but not a maid for money. She was a maid in exchange for food.
Living in Trinidad at that time as a youngster, how was it?
I came from the foothills of Northern Range of Mountains. My father had dug down the side of the mountain to create a bit of a flat space so he can build a wooden house. It was a one-room house. I would say a two-room house, but not a two-bedroom house, a one-bedroom house. At that time, it was four of us siblings, and it was squatting land. No one bothered you being up in the hills there. And they had an outside toilet and an outside kitchen. And there was at the side of the precipice was a stream and a cocoa estate. And the other side of because we were actually at the top of the hills, the other side was a free-flowing river, and there was a cocoa estate there. And I grew up I actually learned to swim in that river, climbing trees, climbing coconut trees, picking fruits, jumping from branch to branch, biting a fruit. There were always different types of fruits in season. And for me, it was idyllic, the flora, the fauna, the excitement, growing up in an environment that was very country-like. And to come from that kind of environment without clothes, without having the need to wear clothes, never mind not having clothes. But it was a pretty basic environment, but a very happy one, I have to say, because we knew nothing else. We knew nothing else. Parents didn't have to bother about where we were. We would go missing for many hours, being in the woods or being in the river or somewhere playing and having fun.
Weren't you scared of snakes and stuff that were in the wild?
It was a pretty precarious environment to grow up in as well. But we were happy. We knew nothing else. Our food was very basic. We had what is known here as a kitchen garden, but it wasn't a kitchen garden. It was like at the side of the hill. My father had cleared away an area, planting different types of vegetables for my mother to cook. Having meat was a rarity. Once a month on a Sunday, we'll have meat, but it'll be like spinach, and it'll be different types of vine vegetables that we'll eat.
Actually, just starting out on what you're saying just fits right into the theme of my show, which is progress despite obstacles. So you're a wonderful first guest on my second season to illustrate that.
I'm happy to be first, yes.
Now tell me, how was it in school?
That's an interesting question. When you come from the hills, the teachers at school never really take you seriously because you'll never amount to anything. So it seems. And quite a lot of my colleagues didn't amount to very much, but those who did, they did very well. They send you through school and you learn the basic reading, writing, arithmetic. You didn't learn anything else. There was nothing about geographies. There was nothing very advanced. It was very basic. And so you go through that system, and when you're age 11, you do something called an 11 plus exam. And if you pass your 11 plus exam, then you go on to college and you do your O levels, ordinary levels, which are 5 different subjects. And they're there to teach you. Whereas in my school, they didn't actually teach you. You just turned up and you occupied a space. I don't ever recall being coerced into learning anything. So it's not surprising that I didn't enjoy school, because there were these many challenges.
College was not the same thing as the United States.
No, college was, if you pass your 11 plus exam, but I try hard to fail my exam because I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to be a tailor. I knew from a very young age what I wanted to do for my career. I was about 9 years old when I cut up my mother's pillowcase into the shape of a pajama pants. And I don't remember what the punishment was, but I remember using our machine. We had those hand sewing machine that you wheel it with one hand and you control with the left hand. And I sewed down the outside leg and I sewed down the inside leg and I washed it and hung it up in the line to dry. I was so proud of it. My mother reminded me many years later that I was about 9 years old when I did that. I don't remember how many pillowcases I cut up, but it may have been just one, because I'm sure I got a spanking for it at the time. But I was so overwhelmed with the happiness of what I made, I didn't feel the blows. At that time, you got a spanking for almost anything. You just look up at your parents in the eye, you get a spanking. And my father never spared the rod. But the experience at school, I was very deliberate in trying to fail my exam, so I wouldn't go to college. And so I was successful in failing. And what I didn't bargain for was that my godfather, he was a teacher at one of the leading colleges, and he could still get me into college even though I had failed my exam. And so I grumbled a lot, but I couldn't grumble to my parents. And there was this girl next door. Her name was Janet. And I fancied Janet. I liked her. I was only 11, 12 years old. Hey, I'm a boy.
True love.
Man. And I grumbled to Janet that if they send me to school, I'd play truant. And she actually told her mother, and her mother then told my mother. And so you could see that the journey now, my mother was now telling my father. And so a spanking is underway. But I wasn't aware that Janet had told her mother. So when my mother called me and asked me what's this going on, I said I didn't want to go. I really didn't want to go to college. And I could almost feel this here today, sitting there and she passing her fingers through my curly hair as though she was moving out the knots from it and saying, you've got to continue going to school for at least another year, but I'll speak to your father. And that was an important turning point because for whatever reason, they allowed me to continue for another year because you couldn't leave school at 12. You had to go until you're 13 or 14. And so before my 14th birthday, I finished schooling. And I went off to learn the trade. I first went off to learn to make pants and shirt.
Now, and was this in Trinidad that you did this?
Absolutely, up in the hills, right up in the hills. In fact,
go ahead.
The tailor was further up the hill, and he was just on the other side of the hill, but a bit higher up. So he was a mountain tailor as well. And they were living in squatting land as well.
Okay, so now you leave college and do you apprentice? Is it an apprenticeship that you do? Or is it a schooling for tailoring that you go to?
No, I was too young to go to the school for tailoring. They didn't accept me. They never explained why. They just said, we can't take him. I learned with this other tailor. I learned to make pants. And after that, I asked to be paid and he wouldn't pay me. My parents paid $20, the equivalent of $10 a month. They paid him quite a lot of money because my father wasn't earning very much with all these odd jobs. He was earning the equivalent of, I think it was like $15 a month or something US, and paying about $2 a month for me to learn the trade. And I learned to make pants in no time at all. In 6 weeks, I'd learned to make pants. So my parents only paid for 2 months. So he only paid $4 for me to learn, which was a great help because that $2 was a huge strain. However, I learned to make pants and I started working for this tailor and he wasn't paying me. And I asked him to learn to make jackets and he wouldn't teach me. He says, you're not ready yet because I'm working for him for free. So didn't want to teach me to make jackets. And so another tailor down in the town offered me to learn to make jackets. And then I went on there. And after the first day, this pants maker that I started with went up and he cussed up that other guy for taking me away. And so I only lasted 1 day. I got fired. The following morning I went back to learn to make jackets and he said, you can't come back here. This is what happened last evening. Here I am, age 14. I got fired from a job. So we had no choice but to go back to this other guy and ask him for my job back. And then he said no. He said no. And not only did he say no, he said, I'll see to it that you don't get anywhere in this trade. And so for months, I was at home. I was mainly in the woods, at the river, playing, having fun out there, and just wasting away. Not knowing my parents were very worried about me. My father, he got me apprenticeship in Port of Spain, the capital. A long way away. It was only 10 miles away. But when you're living in the country, in a small island, it feels 10 miles away is, ooh, boy, what a journey. Take a train and you go a steam train to go there in the town. Man, that was a big thing.
You know, funny, I'm laughing because I live across the street from some stores and stuff around. So if a store is 2 blocks away, I ain't going. It's too far.
One of the tricks about getting me an apprenticeship in Port of Spain was that this tailor couldn't find me. He couldn't stop my career. And the fortunate thing is that tailor who turned me down, he did me a big favor. He did me a big favor because this gentleman that I got an apprenticeship with to learn to make jackets in Port of Spain, he had been to England in the 60s, and he had gone back to Trinidad to do his business, to develop his business. So he came to train and went back to start his own business. And so he excited my mind about this distant land called Savile Row, that he knew I would never get there. But little did he know, my mind was excited about this place that I hadn't done geography at school. So I didn't know anything about England or Europe, but he's telling me about Savile Row, like the captains of industry, prime ministers, Hollywood stars, presidents. That's where they went to have their suits made. They went to the best. So like a young athlete wanting to be Olympics, I wanted to be in the Olympics of tailoring. I learned my trade really well. I learned to make jackets like a young child learning to play a musical instrument. I learned very quickly, and because I was 14 years old. And 14, 15, 16, 17, I saved every cent I earned. Every cent I earned. I saved and saved and saved. Because I wanted to go to Savile Row. When I was 17 and a half years old, in July 1970, I got a passport on the 13th of July, and on the 29th of July, I bought a boat ticket and I sailed away straight away.
And you didn't have, did you have relatives in London?
Nobody.
Nobody. You were just going and you were going to get off the boat and.
I didn't know where I was going.
Okay.
I didn't know where I was going. We had no TV. We had no nothing. I think we had what was called a radio fusion, one of those things, one of those wooden boxes on the wall. But I was going to Savile Row. So I landed in Southampton. I had made myself 2 suits. And I was wearing one of them. I have one of them in my what is called an excuse for a suitcase is a carry-on, but a much smaller carry-on than you would have on a plane now. I had 2 pairs of pajamas. My father gifted me 2 pajamas, 2 sets of pajamas, and I had made myself the 2 suits, and I had 1 shirt, 2 shirts I had, a short sleeve shirt and a long sleeve shirt, and I had 1 pair of shoes, and 1 or 2 pants set. No, I had 1 pants, a black stripy pants. And that's what I came with. That's all I came with. I bought my own ticket and I came. And I got to Southampton where the boat docked, wearing my suit. So I was looking pretty serious. So when the immigration officer, but the immigration actually go on the boat. You don't disembark. They go on the boat, they stamp your passport there. They said, where you're staying. Now I had rehearsed an address that I've never been to. So when he asked me where I was staying, I rolled out. I could tell you that now, 51 years later, I could tell you it was 371 Camden Road, N4 was the zip code. Yeah, it was 371 Camden Road. I'd never been there. And bang, stamped my passport, 6 months visitor's visa, because I said I was coming on a holiday. I was visiting family. You didn't have to have a letter or anything. And because I came by boat, it wasn't strict. Even by plane, it wasn't strict, but I couldn't afford a plane ticket. Anyway, I got digs in North London up in the attic, and I lived in that attic. And the landing, like the corridor, I don't know if you know, it was called a landing. The landing was a sink, and there was a cooker. So the attic was very sloping, but the window was under. You would get light, but that was about it. And I did have a little bit. And I went to Savile Row. I arrived on a Saturday, and the Monday, wearing my suit, came to Savile Row looking for a job. And I got a job at a company called Anthony Sinclair. Now they had a sign out in the window advertising, and that's how they did things. So you had a sign in the window saying presser wanted, tailor wanted, trouser maker wanted, jacket maker wanted. Basically, that was saying, or hand. H-A-N-D, hand wanted. So I went into this hand wanted sign, and it says, yeah, you can start on Monday. So the following Monday, which was the 17th of August, 1970, I turned up to work. And it's a tale of woe, but it's a great story, because I always believed throughout my life, all the challenges I've had have been opportunities. It was almost like a signpost directing me someplace else. So when I went in this Monday for the job, another guy he saw the sign and he came in as well. but that was a white guy. So I had already been given a table where I'm going to start work. But then the boss interviewed, and this guy was Anthony Sinclair. He used to make Sean Connery's suit. He used to make all the suits for the James Bond.
Oh, okay.
So he was a big tailor, big, well-known tailor, busy man. And so when I went to start work, he came up to me about 20 minutes later. He hadn't given me anything yet to do. And he said to me, "Have you used an iron like this?" And I said, "No, I haven't. But it's one when you plug it in, the damn thing gets hot." But I didn't use that brand of iron. I'm used to using an iron in Trinidad. He said, "If you haven't used an iron like this, you can't work here." So I got fired.
Before you started.
Yeah, I got 20 minutes after a job I hadn't started yet, I got fired. But it was clear, and he gave this other guy named Richard. He gave Richard the job because Richard fit the profile. And he needed help. I applied, got it. Someone else applied. He fitted the profile. I got fired. But he must have seen my disappointment. He said, "I'll call around and try and get you another job." He called another tailor on Savile Row. Now, Anthony Sinclair wasn't actually on the street of Savile Row, obliquely opposite Savile Row on another street called Conduit Street. And I went to this other tailor. This tailor asked me if I had a sewing machine at home. I can work for him as an outworker. I only just arrived in the country. I didn't tell him that, though. I said, "No, I haven't got a machine." He says, "Well, okay, I'll ask someone else, see if they can give you a job." So he called up Huntsman and Son, the most famous tailors in the world, where Gregory Peck went, where, all the big Hollywood guys went there, where the John F. Kennedy came to Savile Row. A lot of the big names throughout the world came to Savile Row, and they went to Huntsman's. And I went into Huntsman's, and they gave me a job. So I got fired at about 20 past 9, about 10:30. I had another job. That was amazing. That was great. Because these guys who turned me down, they were actually, I always believe, I was being called in another direction. But when I was at Huntsman's, after the first day at Huntsman, the following day I went into work. But I went through Savile Row. I went through the front of a shop where I went for the interview. Because I started the job straight away. And then they said, "You can't come in here. You've got to go around the back entrance." And they wouldn't even let me in that day. I had to go back out, walk down Savile Row, walk across Burlington Street, walk up Regent Street, turn left into Conduit, into Haddon Street, and then enter the shop at the back. I had to make a full circle around 4 streets to enter the back. They wouldn't let me in at the front. But all those things, I tell you, Stephen, they were lessons. They were lessons in the early days. Coming from Trinidad, I didn't recognize racism. It was totally foreign to me. It didn't exist in my limited vocabulary. I didn't know what it was. So coming here and having to experience those things, I thought, okay, yeah, I took it easy. I was naive. In fact, being naive is what got me through where I am today. Because if I understood racism, I think I would have gone back home. Having said that, I've always wanted to go back home. Being in England was being on an extended holiday, albeit it's 51 years now, but I got 6 months of my passport, but I wiggled my way. I got really streetwise. I wiggled my way through the border agency. I got an extension of a month. I got another extension for a month. I keep getting extensions saying I'm going to school. I wasn't going to school. I was working. I was working 2, 3 jobs, not going to school, but I was paying the fees at the school, but not attending. Mm-hmm. But if you're paying the fees, you get a receipt, and you take the receipt to what is called a UK border agency. You go to UKBA, and with the receipt from the school, they stamp your passport. And because I could only pay for 3 months at a time, so they'll give me an extension. And that's what I kept doing all along until 1974, when the opposition wanted to win the election, and they promised all illegal immigrants amnesty so they can get to stay. And that's how I got to stay in England.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That amnesty.
One of the things that I do find, and you are a great example of that, is that if you don't do, nothing won't happen. You don't know how it's going to turn out. It's not going to turn out at all if you don't do.
That's right.
And you did.
Yeah.
And you had different experiences, but you are here today.
Absolutely. When I got that job at Huntsman's, and I was the back of the shop, and I was working on all these fine cloth and these well-known names. I came to London. I came to Savile Row because I'd heard about all these great people, and I couldn't see them. I'm working on their clothes, but I couldn't see them. So, saving being in my DNA, I would save my money to a job at Huntsman. I started work at 8 a.m. and I finished at 6. And in Trinidad, I was starting work at 20 past 7 in the morning and I was finishing at 9 at night. And I was working 6 days a week. So all of these hours I had to work so I could save the money to go to England. And when I got here, working from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., it was like being on a permanent, and Saturdays off, my friend, and Sundays off.
And you were in London, in the heart of Europe.
The action, where the action was. This is 1970, tail end of the 60s, when smoking pot and the Beatles and the flower, what's it called? Yeah, the East Coast, the West Coast of the United States music. The man, flared trousers, velvet suits. It was the action place. So I got a Saturday job, and then I got another job making the trousers for another tailor. So I had 3 jobs going. And again, I was saving. And then I left Huntsman and I went to college full-time, tailoring college, University of the Arts, London College of Fashion, to do a 3-year degree in bespoke tailoring, business studies, art and design, pattern cutting, fitting, and PE, physical education.
Okay.
And after the first year, the principal called me into his office and he said, if I put you, there's 15 students who starts in the first year, and then 10 get selected to go into the second year. And after the second year, 8 get selected to go to the final year. So this is a big thing. He called me into his office and he said, if you are able to complete a 3-year degree in 2 years, I want to skip you from the first year to go into the third year.
Oh, wow. That was great.
£900 a year school fees I saved, my friend. I was paying foreign student fees of £900 a year. I was working to pay fees. But the great thing is that I was a tailor. And as I was a tailor, and this time, all this time now, I'm still here illegally, But now I joined a full-time educational. And in 1972, I joined the London College of Fashion to do a 3-year degree so that I could get my visa. But being in a tailoring school, I got a table, I got a machine, I got a pressing equipment, I got everything I needed to work. So I was working, I was making suits for people, I was making suits for other students. I was I was using the classroom as my work studio. So I was earning my fee.
Tell me this, how did the name bespoke came from? Where did that come from?
The history of the word bespoke is when you go into a tailor, you didn't go with your own cloth. You go in there and the tailor had rows and rows of bolts of cloth. You'd go in there and you'd select your cloth. You'll have your name written on the swinging ticket, and that cloth would be spoken for. So your cloth would be spoken for. That's the origin of the word bespoke. Now you can have a financial package tailor-made and bespoke especially for you. You can have a bespoke holiday. You can have a bespoke anything you want. So the word the origins of the word bespoke came from tailoring. There's a bit of, yeah.
Now, what is it about from your childhood to where we at right now? What was it about tailoring that was so special to you? Was it the ability to advance, or you just like the whole concept of creation of garments?
That's a very good question, because you mentioned the word creation. It's the creativity of taking what essentially is a flat piece of cloth and creating a 3-dimensional form with it. Is sculpting cloth around a figure. Is being a sculptor with cloth. You've got different types of sculpture. You've got art and design. You got a beautiful oil painting that you frame and put on the wall. You've got a sculpture that's in the corner of someone's room or in a museum or in a public park. This is a piece of sculpture that is around a human body that's being portrayed, that's handmade, that's being portrayed out into the world. And that is how I see sartorial art. That's how I see bespoke tailoring. And I've always had this love because we didn't have clothes. So I wanted initially to learn to make pants so that I could have clothes. And so I got that opportunity and I ran with it. When I got this opportunity at London College of Fashion to finish a 3-year degree in 2 years, as a bespoke tailor, I came to Savile Row looking for a job, came back to Savile Row looking for a job. So bespoke, the origin of the word bespoke, Maurice Sedwell was the only tailor on Savile Row that had a sign that's saying bespoke tailor. No one.
Tell me about, first, before I move to asking you that question, because although you just mentioned it, you haven't gotten to the part about where you started working there. After you got out of school, when did you know you made it?
I am still on a journey. I haven't made it yet.
Oh, come on now. Come on now.
Man,
many people that said that you have.
Everyone else says that. I have a vision for myself. I have a vision for my family. And I believe that I'm always on a journey of discovery, a journey of learning. And I repeat those words because I continually set myself achievable goals. And then when I achieve that, I set myself another higher achievable goal. And then I keep going, just keep climbing the ladder. And it's almost like being in a cocoon, but everyone else is seeing you from the outside, but you're not seeing them. And my life is such that whatever I've achieved infinitely more than I set out to achieve in my field, with all of the accolades and awards and prizes, and lifestyle and so on. However, I am still on a journey. It is rather when I arrive, I'm still going, you know.
But you know, what I meant by that question is that at some point when we're young men and we are striving to go on a path, you look back and you say to yourself at that particular time, damn, I'm pretty good. People are starting to notice me. So that at some point there that people begin to notice you.
You asked me a question. Let me tell you a story. When I came back to Savile Row looking for a job, no one would give me a job.
Mm-hmm.
I came out of London College of Fashion in 1974. I'm now 22 years old. I have a lot of experience. I started before I was 14 years old. Mm-hmm. I've got 7 years of experience. I'm trained. They made a special certificate for me at college, a distinction in the field of tailoring. They made a certificate especially for me. And I came with my fancy certificate with a suit that I made looking for a job, but I didn't want to be in the back room. I wanted to be at the front. I wanted to be at the front. I wanted to be close to those who I've heard about. And I was highly qualified, knowledgeable, recommended. No one. I just did not fit the profile of being the front of a shop on Savile Row. They'll have African leaders come into Savile Row at the front of a shop. They'll take their money, but they wouldn't employ their people at the front. They'll have customers from all over the world. They'll take their money. They ain't going to employ them. They're not going to employ you. I just didn't look right. And I had this West Indian accent. Nothing fitted the profile of what they wanted. In fact, one tailor, they're still on Savile Row, called Deej and Skinner. The boss, John Deej, said to me, he said, our customers would not take kindly to a foreigner. But if you want a job in the back room, you got a job there. I walked out. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be at the front of the shop. So I'll keep back. Every time I go back to the college, the principal, I would tell him, I said, I didn't get a job. Didn't get a job, didn't get a job, didn't get a job. I said that it must have been 11 times. And lesser experienced persons were getting jobs. I wasn't getting it. Then Mr. Maurice Sedwell called up the college. Bear in mind, you have 8 graduates coming out of London College of Fashion. There must have been 45, 50 tailoring houses in and around Savile Row. The business is booming. And 8 graduates coming out. The world's your oyster. They're clamoring to employ you. But they ain't going to take me. I just didn't. And another guy called Braxton Phillips, they wouldn't take Braxton either. He was from Bermuda. Braxton and I graduated at the same time. They wouldn't take Braxton. They wouldn't take me. Braxton went back home. And Maurice Sedwell called up and says, do you have any graduates? Man, I was the only one unemployed. Braxton decided to go back home. And Maurice Sedwell gave me a 4-week trial. And so I worked my way up with Maurice Sedwell, and I wasn't at the front. He gave me a trial. After a couple of weeks, he said, you got a job. But I wasn't at the front, and I wanted to be at the front. But the front didn't make that much of a difference because he wasn't a ground floor tailor. He was an upper floor tailor. Every other tailor was on the ground floor. Maurice Sedwell was the only tailor on the upper floor. And so being at the front didn't make a difference. When customers come, they either see you or they don't see you. But it was such a small shop with 500 square feet of space. They didn't see you because you're there. But being at the back at Maurice Sedwell, whenever they had a problem, he would bring it to me to fix. And the customers began to recognize that I'm the guy who's doing the fixing of whatever it is was wrong. And so whenever they had a problem, customers began to ask for me. They began to ask for me. And then someone else offered me a job to pay me double my salary. And but Maurice Sedwell, I was working now 5.5 days a week. I was doing all sorts of things. I wasn't just working at Maurice Sedwell, I'm making clothes for other people anyway. And he doubled my salary, he matched it, he wouldn't let me leave. So that's the first time I tried to leave. Then the second time I tried to leave, the principal at the London College of Fashion came to see me and he said, I wanted to apply for a job that's coming up because we wanted to teach at the London College of Fashion. Tried to leave then, he wouldn't let me leave. And it was a really good package. He wouldn't let me leave. And he said, look, if you can buy some shares in the business, then it's available to you. And so I worked for 50% of my salary. I went right back to half salary. And the other half, I bought some shares in the company. But I took a part-time job at London College of Fashion. And I was teaching there from 1976 to 1988. I'm telling you this background. This all relates to the story you asked me, the question you asked me. Because I continued teaching Monday, Wednesday, and Friday and developing a career teaching and developing a parallel career on Savile Row and making suits for friends on weekends and so on. I was building a customer base. So come 5 years, Maurice said, I wanted 5 years after 1982, 1988. Now I'm 14 years at Maurice Sedwell. I said to Mr. Sedwell, I want to leave. I want to start my own business. He still wouldn't let me leave. He says, if you can buy the business, we'll sell you 90% of the business and we'll keep 10. But if you can raise the money, but I'd been saving and saving and saving and saving. And I bought Maurice Sedwell Limited in August 1988.
I'm going to go a little bit back because the answer to my question is that you know that you made it is when you wanted to leave and they didn't want you to go.
Yeah, you found that answer for me. Yeah, you're right. You found that answer for me. So I'm giving you plenty of when I made it. When I felt I really made it, Stephen, when I felt I really made it, it was when I had 90% of Maurice Sedwell Limited. I moved from number 9 Savile Row to where I'm sitting here now, number 19 Savile Row, from 500 square feet of space to 3,000 square feet of space, having tailored suits for customers at that time in about 30 countries. And I locked the door on the first evening.
Did you pull out a cigar and some cognac?
I said the Lord's Prayer. I said the Lord's Prayer aloud.
But I still think that you made it when the first person that you were working for and somebody come in and say, well, they want you to work here. No, don't leave.
Yeah.
Yeah. That means that they, at that particular point in time, recognize your importance to their business.
Indeed. Mr. Sedwell recognized that, but I didn't. I needed the money. I wanted the money. I was moving for the money because I wanted to buy my own home. I actually bought my own home in 1975. So that's 2 and 3 is 5. So I was 23 years old when I bought my own house. Mind you, at that time, it would cost a lot of money. It was very expensive. It cost me £9,000.
Oh, to buy a home for £9,000 today would be wonderful, wouldn't it?
You can't even buy a garage for £9,000 a month sometimes, some places.
Tell me about Maurice. How was he in terms of his interrelationship with you?
Maurice Sedwell was a very interesting man. He had been in the radar room in the Navy during the war. He had traveled the world. He had been open to other peoples. He had seen other type of peoples. He had docked in different parts of the world. So he'd been widely traveled. He'd been open-minded. Whereas all these other shops in Savile Row, all these tailoring houses, were these all upper class that weren't traveled at all. Maurice Sedwell was a guy, he had a great sense of humor. He would invite me out to lunch. He used to get criticism from his colleagues about having a West Indian. I was known as a West Indian, and he would sing my praises to these guys. I tell you what, how I got my first house. He's the one who bought a newspaper with homes advertised. And then I looked at these things, and I bought a house not far from where he lived. He lived in the posh part. He lived in a £60,000 house, and I lived in a £9,000 house. It was like a complete different world. It was a different world. Private gate to drive in and stuff like that. Gated houses. So you had to go through a century to get into that area. He encouraged me to get my own house. And I went to the local council and got a loan there at a low rate of interest for poor people loan. Yeah.
Now, after you acquired 90% of the business, from being there for 14 years, I'm sure you had some ideas of, if you ran this place, this is what I would do. And what are some of the changes that you made?
I'll tell you, Stephen, it's interesting you should ask that question, because I had always, one of the reasons why Mr. Sedwell, on reflection, gave me that opportunity, it's because I had always been constructively critical of what we were doing. I would be very critical of the standard of craftsmanship, to cut and the fit and everything. I would say, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? Whatever it is. He used to call me the doctor, because anything that went wrong, and I used to fix it. I used to put it right. And I changed everything. First thing I did, I literally cleared out the entire 500 square feet of space and to 4 walls, and I redecorated, and I had a separate front showroom, separated tailor's back room, a little office that fitted the size of a desk, and all that it fitted was a desk and a chair, and I had a fitting room. And I accommodated the customers in a really nice fitting room. There was no more than like about 4 feet wide by about 5 feet long, but they had a fitting room now, which they didn't have before. And I changed the threads that we use. Instead of using cotton. Cotton is very good. We still use cotton, but I changed that to pure silk to do all the hand finish. I changed the buttons from plastic buttons to natural horn buttons, stag horn buttons. I changed the quality of cloths that we used, the interlining, the body lining. I became very pedantic about our standards. I reduced the amount of machine work that the company did, and I increased the amount of handwork that we did. There was like a 50-50, or maybe less than 50, in maybe 30%, 25-30% handwork, and the rest was machine. I swung it around completely, 90% handwork until today. I came to London, I came to Savile Row because of the reputation of handcraft tailoring. And when I came here, I found Maurice Sedwell wasn't doing what I dreamt was being done. Not only Maurice Sedwell, several other tailors. And so I decided that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to stand out. If you think of Savile Row, every building is a tailor. There are 40 addresses in Savile Row. It's only a short street. Every building is a tailor. And around the corner on Clifford Street, they're tailors. The other street, Conduit Street, they're tailors. Every other side street, they're tailors. Everywhere. Ready-to-wear didn't have a look in at that time. It was all tailors. And so how do you, if you're in the same marketplace, stand out? How can you be different? How can you be desirable? And I made a conscious decision to take the gentleman's suit and redesign it into our signature style, which is what I do today. I didn't have the confidence to encourage customers to do it, but gradually over the years, I changed it. Now, less than 1% of the suits we make is a standard suit. We make our own signature styles.
Did you find that when you took over the company for a while, was there a dip in terms of the people who frequent the shop for services that they just decided not to be there anymore?
The drop in business was about 80, 90%. I had no business because Maurice Sedwell was not there. Even though I was doing all of the work while he was there and his managing director was there and all the tailors were there. I fired all the tailors, by the way. I didn't get any. What I did is I had the address book and I wrote to all of the customers, giving them a reference of another customer they can write to verify my standards. I didn't ask permission. And I was basically trying to be creative because I know they ain't going to write to anybody else. Also, when I was with Maurice Sedwell, the PPS, the Permanent Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister, was a guy called Mark Lennox Boyd. Mark Lennox Boyd was a very political family, professional politicians, and now he's Lord Boyd. Now, Mark Lennox Boyd had come in there and Maurice Sedwell had made him 2 suits. I had nothing to do with the suits. And I was the only person in the shop. And I said to him, Mr. Lennox Boyd, I think there's a slight pull on the shoulder of your suit, jacket. I think I can fix it. And he said, all my suits are like that. And I said, let me have him. I can fix him. And so he sent the first 2 that we made him. I fixed them. And then he sent a bunch of other suits for me to fix. I fixed them all and he had them collected. Now, this is a guy who had been to Maurice Sedwell twice before and saw me. He just turned up and went away because the boss wasn't there. No one was there. I was there on my own. And he went away. Twice that happened. So on this 3rd occasion, when he turned up, because the PPS of the Prime Minister don't make appointments, he just turns up. And when I fixed all his suit, he phoned up Maurice Sedwell and he asked what my name was. This is after fixing all his suit. He didn't even know my name. Then he said to Maurice Sedwell, when next I come back to your establishment, I want Andrew to fit my suits. And that was an important turning point because when I bought the company, I wrote to Mark Lennox Boyd and I said to him, I would like to have introductions. He introduced me to 24 members of parliament. And I had 6 cabinet ministers, the closest people to the Prime Minister, coming to me to have their suits made.
That's a great story. That's a great story.
Yeah.
Kudos. As you move forward, you own Maurice Sedwell, and knowing that you became quite successful along the way, you turn to something else because in your background, it's always about giving back, right? Yes, yeah. Let's talk about that.
The Savile Row Tailoring Academy. Now, there's a great risk here, Stephen. You ask me a question, I tell you a whole long damn story. Because there's never a short answer to how you get this journey of discovery that I talked about, that vision. I had a vision that the tailoring establishments of Savile Row, they're so damn selfish. They never take on trainees. They never take on apprentices. If they took you on, they teach you to make trousers and you make trousers until you retire. If it's jackets, you make jackets until you retire. If it's to make pockets, All you ever do in your life is make pockets. To become a presser, you just press the suits. That's all you ever did. They didn't multi-skill train you. And I was very much into multi-skilling and training because I've been teaching at London College of Fashion. And it was while being a student, I was teaching. So I developed the skill to impart knowledge and experience. And so teaching became a part of my DNA. And I found myself with being president of the Master Tailors Association because I'm the only guy who would be proactive in just about anything in this association. So they elected me as president. But I was just president and they would never action anything that I'm introducing. And so after 7 years of being president, I got fed up with them because every year I would say, look, I brought training on the agenda and my annual speech. I would talk about training, marketing, promoting, advertising. They were never interested. They weren't prepared to change with the times. They weren't prepared to change with any kind of developments. They thought it was going to last forever. They had a secret vote not to support me. 39 members, secret vote not to support me. I resigned as president and I started the Savile Row Academy in 2007 with 6 students on a 3-year degree. I didn't reinvent the wheel, the same degree I did. I taught that degree, not giving them a degree, but teaching them ready to work training so that after 3 years, they can get jobs. But what I was also doing, that 3 years, they were being interviewed without their knowing they were being interviewed because I was looking for people whom I could train and employ. They paid for their training. So if they wanted to go out somewhere else, then they could have gone. And I employ 4 out of the 6 that after 3 years, I employed 4 out of the 6 people. And that's how I started to build and build. I actually literally yesterday checked how many we trained at the Savile Row Academy. It's 285 students been through the Savile Row Academy already from 15 countries. So sharing knowledge and experience. Then I've been abroad teaching. I've been back to my homeland teaching tailoring, which a degree, 2-year degree that I just finished teaching. So I come and go. And now my hope is to expand the knowledge to the United States.
And how are you going about that?
Again, there's another story. I've made suits now for customers in 60 countries. 30% of the customers I have from abroad come from the United States. 30%. So there's a huge demand. And every other tailor on Savile Row have at least that percentage or even more of American customers that actually come to Savile Row to have their suits made. So there is a huge market. I have the Savile Row Academy here in London, and I get a huge amount of applications from the United States. And they have problems in getting visas to come because it's a small school. We got a license to teach, design, and deliver the courses, but not a license for visas. Because the idea of the license is to provide ready-to-work training for the industry and to employ local people. And so the applications that we get from the US, we can't fulfill those. So I felt I wanted to reach out to the country. So the country that's been very good to me, I want to be able to give back. Same way as I went to Trinidad and I spent 2 years giving back and training 35 students there into becoming master tailors over 2 years. I felt, you know what, the United States is the next stop. That's where I want to go. That's where I want to share the knowledge and experience. And I get a lot of applications from the US. And so to develop the Savile Row Academy, SRAUSA, that's the plan. My hope is, if not by the latter part of next year, certainly the early part of 2023, to be firmly established teaching. I tell you what, as I said earlier on, I didn't reinvent the wheel when I started the Savile Row Academy. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I'm going to teach the skills that I have learned and the skills that I have developed over the years. And my skills now have completely changed from when I first came out of the London College of Fashion. I've developed my own system of pattern drafting, cutting, fitting, problems, diagnosis, remedy. I have designed the suit, my own suits, designed fabrics, and I am now wanting to come out of the States to teach art and design, bespoke tailorings, business studies, entrepreneurial, studies, and what is very important to what I want to do in the United States, which I have not done here in the UK, is I want to run a train the trainers program. So as part of the 3-year degree that I want to teach out there, is that a part of it will be a train the trainers program. So we hopefully will start with 15 students in the first year, take them into the second year. We're not going to have a selection process like we had at London College of Fashion. Instead of selecting 10 and then on to 8, I want to put all 15 into the second year and then all 15 into the third year, and just keep taking 15 every year. And in the final year, after they finish their degree, I want to select those, and they're going through a silent interview of those whom I become good teachers and put them through a program of what I would call trainer trainers. So they will become trainers, and so there'll be continuity. So the SRA USA, Savile Row Academy USA, is going to be the center of learning, preferably in Washington, D.C., because I like the city. It's going to be the center of learning for all of North America. And a lot of the countries where they can't get visas to come into the UK to train, we're going to be training them in the United States.
Do you have a way that people who might want to be involved in donations, do you have an address and email for them? I'll put it at the end of the broadcast, but I want you to tell them where they need to go to.
I hadn't thought about that question, but thank you very much for asking that question, because what I've done is I've registered a 501(c), not-for-profit in Washington, D.C. Yeah, I've registered a Savile Row Academy, 501(c), and we're looking for donations to make this happen. My primary purpose, I'll say this to you, even though we open to everyone, I get very emotional about, and I'm getting choked up now. Sorry.
It's called Progress Despite Obstacles.
I get very emotional about teaching my own people.
So there's going to be an emphasis on trying to make sure that you bring aboard people that have been marginalized along the way. And you have shown your ability to not only do the work, but also train the people. And
I think it's important that I'm sharing knowledge, even though a lot of what I do is self-taught to development in my career and my skills. Someone's taught us something. And it is our responsibility to share, to multiply, to go out there and reach those people who don't get it. You asked how to reach me.
Yes.
It's Andrew at savilerowacademy.co.uk.
Say it one more time. Say it one more time.
Andrew at savilerowacademy.co.uk. Always remember, Savile is one L. As you guys say, Savile. It's one L on Savile. So that's Savile. Row as in row, the sort of things you never have in your life. ROW. So SAVILEROW academy.co.uk. Andrew at savilerowacademy.co.uk.
I thank you so much for being on the show. That's the show about stuff, the Stephen Davis Show. Tune in next week for another wonderful episode. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in this week. Hope you enjoyed this show about stuff. See you next time.